Thank you and welcome. I'm Bill Brugman. I'm one of the co-presidents of the St. Tammany Parish Retired School Employees Organization. And on behalf of the organization, I'd like to welcome all of you to this informational meeting concerning potential challenges to our retirement system. At this time, we're going to have an invocation led by former president of this organization, Marion Arrowsmith, and then the Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Ms. Rhonda Chambers, who is my co-president. If you all would please rise, please.
Thank you, Bill. You may bow your heads if you so choose. Father in heaven, thank you for this beautiful day and bless us as we gather here for this meeting. Guide our minds and hearts as we work for the good of our school system, retirees, communities, and our state. Help and guide our leaders to find ways to be creative and able to identify solutions to the many complex problems in our state and country. Help us to be wise in our decisions. We pray for vision, hope, and unity. Keep us all safe and healthy. Be with those who are unable to be with us today. We give thanks for our many blessings and hope with your guidance we can make our world a better and safer place to live. We offer this prayer in your name. Amen.
And now the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated.
Thank you, Marion and Rhonda. We're here today to make all of you more aware of the challenges that we may face in light of the very serious financial state that our deficit that our state finds itself in. No doubt that this condition has the probability of having an effect not only on current retirees, but even potentially more so on people that are still working. For example, it was in the Advocate last week, an article that covered a presentation by a special interest group that is very influential and very vocal in the state of Louisiana. And the head of this group went on to say in the article that they did not want any reductions to their group, no cuts, nor any tax increases. Toward the latter part of the article, it's said, and I'll just read one line, reining in state pension systems, which cost the state $2 billion a year. Well, if you've been aware of what the financial condition of the state is, it's very interesting that the anticipated deficit for the 16-17 fiscal year happens to be $2 billion. Reining in the pension systems, $2 billion, and the potential anticipated deficit is $2 billion. This morning, our guest speaker is going to be more specific about the challenges that we may face. His presentation will accept questions at the latter part of the presentation after he finishes. And I'd like to tell you a little bit something about him, very briefly. He's an LSU graduate. He's been a classroom teacher. He's been a public school administrator. He's been a Department of Education supervisor, and he is on the Board of Trustees for the Louisiana Retired Teachers Association. He is currently the Executive Director of the Retired Teachers Association. Won't you please join me in welcoming Mr. Rodney Watson.
Thank you, Bill. It's a pleasure to be here. I had a great opportunity to be here in December and talk with the local RTA, and understand we have active members here. So as I segue into my presentation, how many retirees do we have in the room today? Just a show of hands. Okay, great. How many active employees? Terrific. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being here. There's a lot going on in our state. There's a lot going on nationwide. As I have moved through my 30-plus years in education, we've seen lots of changes happen. Now, most of us are approaching retirement or in retirement. We need to look at protecting those retirement benefits. So what I'm going to do today is to provide an overview to you on the state of affairs of retirement in Louisiana and circumventing and looking at how we are as a nation. Where are the issues with our retirement system in regards to our legislature? How that affects us? How do we defend it? And what resources can I provide to you in order to defend our system? I'd like to say my many, many years in state government working with the legislature, we've accomplished a lot of things. This does not have to be an adversarial discussion with legislators. It should be one that we can quantify each of the issues, provide reasonable information that says our system is not only defendable, but is robust and can provide the benefits for all of us, and a professional way to communicate with legislators. So everyone, I hope you have a copy of the handout that I'm providing to you. There are resources in there. In addition to the article, there are 2 articles that we're going to use to defend our system. I'm going to make mention to one new one that I received yesterday. There's also a legislative update. We had 20 bills drop into the system in January that could have or will have effect either on our system as it exists or for new hires. And to preface that by saying in red, I put a proposed stance of support, not support, or to be assigned. Those were just placeholders for me. None of that has been reviewed officially by the TRSL board or our board. But we'll provide you with that update in a few weeks once that happens. So to proceed with the presentation, let's try to understand the retirement dilemma. Putting this in perspective, the entire nation is re-examining retirement. This is not an issue unique to Louisiana. Every state's doing it. Most states have done what we have called a defined benefit plan, where we get a guaranteed retirement every month. There is a push to shift from defined benefits to a defined contribution, a DC plan, which operates more like individual accounts or a hybrid account where they invest your money with the employer share, and then at the end of the day, whatever's in that account is what we retire on. So there is this dual conversation going on, and states are trying to decide what is the best way to go. I think it's important to note that no retirement plan was perfect from its inception. Every single retirement plan that I've read about nationwide has gone through iterations and changes. And so when we look at things like debt with our system, administrative cost with our systems, benefits paid out with our systems, every institution has gone through changes over the years to make that system provide the payouts to the beneficiaries and also to provide procedural safeguards to keep the system robust. And Louisiana is not unique to that. Business and government are constantly examining retirement plans in order to provide the benefits, but at the same time to control for employer costs. Now, I want to say this from the beginning. This bullet's very important because when you start talking to your legislators, employer cost is one of the biggest issues they have with our system. Right now, employer costs are volatile. They continue to go up. And employers only have so much money. And of course, for us, we know that's paid through our MFP from the state and through the local tax base that supplements that. But I'm going to give you an explanation of why it's large and how we're getting that under control. And finally, our task is to help legislators and stakeholders understand that this can be accomplished, the stabilization of our system, with our current plan. That's the message today. How do we maintain our current plan? So, I did a lot of curriculum development. I know several of you in this room from a past life. The state content standards, prior to Common Core, I was the facilitator of that, helped develop state curriculum. So I'm very much sort of an educator when it comes about backward design and looking at how we do that. So I'm doing the same thing for us. I'm going to frame the issues, give you several essential questions that have to be answered and give you the answer to those. So this is basically the issue. When we talk to legislators and stakeholders, our expectation is that we will collect a guaranteed benefit for the duration of our lives. And let's face it, when we went into education, nobody asked us, do you want to participate in TRSL? Do we participate in Social Security? Absolutely not. One of only 12 states that don't participate. So when you start reading, well, this state went to a DC system, check and see if they are not also paying into Social Security, because a lot of them are. We change our benefit plan, we are reducing our benefits and our payout by even more because we don't have a backup plan. The other is the expectation is that we would receive a cost of living increase as inflation diminishes the buying power of our benefit. Now, our older retirees are feeling this certainly more than newer retirees and active employees will, but COLAs is a big issue. The problem in Louisiana, COLAs are not built into our benefit plan. Our benefits are pre-funded. We know what we're going to get from the time we enter the system. COLAs are not in there. So that is a dilemma. I think legislators have tried to help us with COLAs, but we have to build that into the system if we want them on a regular basis. Incidentally, 2 bills have been introduced for COLAs this year, and we'll keep you updated on that. And the final expectation is that our legislators will protect our current retirement plan and provide COLAs. That's the expectation. So as I segue into the essential questions, I'm reminded that most of us, when we went into education, we did the right thing. We told and taught our students to do the right thing. We went into it thinking, if we do the right thing, the system's going to do the right thing for us. Well, that's not the case, because there are such tremendous fiscal woes in this state and this country that legislators are grappling with how to balance budgets and still at the same time provide that benefit. So we have to be active in our own defense of the system. And so we've sort of developed the mantra for our organization is through evangelism and activism. We want our numbers to grow. When we put on these letters and when we talk to legislators and said we represent 23,000 people, that's powerful. Activism is, well, you can't go, and my experience is, yes, you could go to a legislator and say, I'm living below the poverty line with my retirement. Please give us a COLA. Well, yes, an emotional discussion can be compelling, but my experience is through activism, facts, figures that prove the system is robust and can sustain. That's what I want to provide you with when you leave here today. The information I give you will help you communicate that message. So here's the essential questions, and to me the biggest one is, how do we provide the best education for the children of our state? Take retirement out of it. We're educators. The biggest and most essential question of all is, how do we provide the best education for the students of our state? Now, how can we defend our retirement system when we don't even understand our current plan and we don't understand the proposed changes the legislator wants? And I've sent things out and tried to upgrade our newsletter. I am going to provide tutorials on each of these questions in the coming months. But we asked for feedback, and some of them said, well, what's an actuary? What do you mean a defined benefit? So we throw these terms out to you, but you don't understand them and can't use them. So I'm going to give you a very brief tutorial this month and additional information in coming months. Why do legislators want to change our current plan? And how can we convince them to maintain that plan? What additional resources can LRTA provide to you to help defend the plan? I've given you a couple today, and I'm going to give you another one before the end of my presentation. And how do we, as active employees and retirees, become activists in protecting our current plan and communicating a positive message about our system? That's important. And I asked how many active and retirees we have here, because we're all in the same plan. If they close the system today, technically, you could close the system at any time and it could sustain itself, but the problem is our expenses, namely our debt, is so high that research is showing that states that have tried to do that change are not successful in paying off the debt and providing the benefit. So let's go through these quickly. How do we provide the best education for the children of our state? Well, we all know, everyone in this room knows that research shows the teacher is the most important factor in the education of children. and that's us. But research also shows that teachers make 17% less than their counterparts in the private sector. So how do we get teachers? How do we get good quality people into our profession? Well, a guaranteed benefit, the retirement, is one of the ways we do that. Now, we can all say altruistically we went into teaching because it was a calling. Yeah, but we still have to raise families and pay bills, and we make sacrifices and do a lower salary. But how many of us went into profession because we knew there was something at the end of the day that would take care of us? And I'm speaking for the future as well, because we know that many teacher preparation programs are able to counsel students who are on the fence about professions into our teaching profession because there is that guaranteed benefit. I was at Tulane the last 5 years in their teacher certification program. I can't tell you how many students came in, and boy, they were ready to teach. Then when we gave them salary schedules for the local, they went, "What? I can't live off this." But then when we told them about benefits, health care, and we told them about retirement, that made a difference. So I can tell you firsthand that does happen. I have a son who has decided he wants to be a teacher. He's in the middle of his certification at LSU. This system goes away, it's not going to be as attractive for him because he's got to make decisions about quality of life for himself. Also, a lot of proponents are saying, well, we can still shift to a DC system, a 401k, because that's portable. We don't want portable teachers. Teacher retention is another body of research that says experienced teachers are the ones that make the difference. Remember, I used to say all the time at Tulane, we do a really good job of preparing novice teachers. That's what teacher preparation programs do. But good teaching is a function of those skills you learn and the experience. And research is showing that providing a guaranteed benefit and staying with the profession and giving that benefit is how we keep experienced, qualified teachers in our profession. Okay, so let's try to understand the plan. Currently, we are a DB plan. If you don't know that, that's your first homework assignment. Defined benefit. That's the kind of plan we have. That's the kind of plan we want to maintain. That's a plan where we are guaranteed a monthly payable benefit, and it's defined. And that's what we call a pre-funded plan. Okay? So back to the altruism. How many times and how many of us went through, there were times to think, I can't make it another 5 years. I can't make it to retirement. You go in that teacher's lounge or sit at your desk and you go, okay, 20 times 2.0 times such and such to make this, but if I can make it to 25 or 55, we all did it. And sometimes that gave us that little push to go in and give another 5 years of good experience to the education profession. And I think that's very important to keep in mind. It is a traditional pension with predetermined benefits, and it's payable until death. Okay, so I'm an old chemistry teacher. I was the first state accountability director. I've used data for most of my career and profession, so when we start using these terms, it's important. How do the terms relate to each other? So I have taken an equation for retirement and framed my discussion around this. And by the way, I took this equation from some research on understanding retirement systems. So I'm not taking credit for the equation, but simply using it to frame our system. So C plus I equals B plus E. That means the contributions that are made into the system plus the income. We take those contributions and we invest it. All of that put together will equal the right side, which is the benefits. That's what's paid to us and our beneficiaries, plus the expenses. It takes money to maintain the system. TRSL is an agency. We do have to pay for some of our investments and return on those investments. And of course, we have a huge debt. So for this equation to be balanced, both sides of the equation have to produce the desired results. So to put a fine point on it, under contributions, the employer and the employees contribute to the fund, okay? These funds are invested, and the excess earnings on those investments are called our income. Did you know that most of our retirement benefits comes from the interest investments? About 60% or more of our monthly payout comes from the interest investments. And that's because we have such a broad income base, we can withstand the fluctuations in the market. And you're going to hear talk during this session, the economy is really bad. The return rate of 3.18 is not enough to provide the benefits. Of course it's not. But actuaries average that information over 20 to 30 years and roll the data in each year to say we're going to get that return on the investment. All right. So on a DB plan like ours, look on the right-hand side of the equation, and it'll show that the benefit for us is predetermined. We're guaranteed that amount of money. Okay, so when we multiplied that 2.5 times 30 years times the average 3 years top salary, those of us that are already retired, we came up with our benefit. For active employees, if you came in after 2010, they've made changes. They average over 5 years now. They have anti-spiking things in there to stabilize the system, but they're still pretty much using the same type of formula. For a DC system, they're taking, it's not predetermined. They're taking the employer's part, they're taking your part, they're investing that on your behalf. Some states allow you to make the investments, other states are talking about pooling it together and making investments for you. But at the end of the day, it's whatever's in that account under your name, whatever's there, that's your retirement. If anybody in here has a 401k or an IRA, you know what I'm talking about. The problem is individual investment accounts don't provide enough benefit to live off of. Most of us that have 401ks, that is a supplement to our retirement. That is not the source of our retirement. Now, I'm not saying down the road they may not come up with a system that would produce the kind of benefit we could live off of, but right now I haven't seen research to support that a state has successfully done that. So basically, the defined benefit is generally a larger annuity than the defined contribution. And I would say a large part of that is we pool our money together, and those large asset base that can withstand the fluctuations in the stock market provide us with the benefit to do that. Now, we are in trouble. I'm going to show it. I'm not going to sugarcoat this and say, oh, we have a perfect system. It's certainly not a perfect system, but we have enough procedural safeguards in place to show that if they go through with the plan, that we will be a very stable system. So just very quickly, if your contributions and your income are greater than your benefits and expenses, you're overfunded. I haven't found one of those yet, but right now we're not overfunded. But if they are less, then they're underfunded, and we are underfunded currently. Okay. So if B is predetermined and the contributions and the incomes are not meeting its obligation, then we're underfunded. Also, if our expenses are greater than the employer's contribution and the income, then we're underfunded. And this is where we are with our system. All right, so moving right along. Using this equation then, where are we currently with our plan? Okay, so you've had your tutorial, so now let's look at where we are with our plan. Well, we're not very balanced if you look at that slide. If you look right now, on the right-hand side of the scale, our benefits and expenses are heavier than our contributions and our income. So currently, the expenses and contributions do outweigh. Right now, 60.9% of our system is fully funded. What that means is everyone retired today, 60.9% of the people who are in the system would receive their benefit. That's why I want active people here. I feel like the active employees are the most at risk, because if we run out of money before they collect their full benefit, then that's the issue. I mean, an alternative might be, okay, we don't have enough money, and the judge says, well, you've got to pay everybody something, then they might reduce everybody's benefit. I don't know how that would play out, but I would say percentage-wise, this is where we are. So the scale is tipped because of the UAL. That's the next term you want to understand. And the UAL is the unfunded accrued liability. Accrued liability. Liability means somebody is responsible for something, right? Okay, that responsibility is the debt the state incurred for not paying in their share, their employer share, for many, many years. This is not unique to Louisiana. Many, many states have done this. In the glory years when the market was going through the roof, they said, oh, you're overfunded, you've got plenty of money. They put IOUs in. And it is amassed into a huge debt. Okay, so that is one reason we're underfunded. The state technically is still responsible for that. Currently, our debt for TRSL is $11.1 billion. That's a lot of money. Legislators have concerns that the investment income will not produce the benefits and pay the expenses. It's a real concern. But I'm going to show you how we have a plan and how it's working. Therefore, they continue to increase the employer contribution rate. And I've been a superintendent. I can tell you, when you go to pay that employer rate and it's high, you only have so much money to pay it with. And it really is breaking the backs of the local economies as we move through tough times. So currently, how much does the employee pay? 8%. All of us paid 8%. That went up a little bit a few years ago. The employer contribution, and this is their total contribution, is 25.4%. That means the employer is paying 25.4% of your salary into your retirement. That's pretty backbreaking. A lot of our legislators run their own businesses. That's tough. If they had to pay 25.4% of an employee's salary into a retirement system, you could see where that would be concerned. So business owners have concerns about that. So let's paint a very realistic picture before we try to defend that picture. This is extremely high due to the UAL. Most of that 25.4% is paying down the debt. So if the employer share and the expenses are so high, why do we want to defend our underfunded system? Anybody have an answer to that? John said, as Marine West Guard. Well, first of all, we invested with good faith, and we were guaranteed that property right. But the reality is, we need to now, what's the ammunition we use to defend that statement? Because it is a very, very real issue. More importantly, why would we defend it when legislators are looking to do these things? Deal with the volatility of the stock market through tough economic times. We know right now this is a hard time to defend retirement because the stock market is in not very good shape worldwide. Balance the state budget. I don't know how many people watched the governor's speech last night or the retort, but that's going to be a tough one. Our systems cost a lot of money. And I think really importantly, our retirement committees, when they meet, they want to provide stability to the system and predictability for the cost. If we keep going up on the employer cost or even the employee cost, and we can't meet our debts and our obligations, that's a real issue. So now I've laid it out for you. This, I think, is a realistic picture of where we are. So let's go through and defend it. And so from this point on, I want you to keep two thoughts in mind. The first is, why do we want to retain our current system, which I'm about to present to you, and why do we not want to go to a DC system? And I'm going to give you thought for that because it's going to take both of those to get through the session, because I'm going to share with you legislation that has been introduced to change our system for new employees to a hybrid model, which would not provide the same type of guaranteed benefit that we have now. All right, so very quickly, how did we come up with that 25.4%? Well, right now, the employer normal cost, in other words, for new employees that come in the system, is 4%. That's not too bad, actually. The problem is, to pay down the debt, they're paying 21.23%. So the total cost is that 25.4. By the way, that's a moving target. We have a mandatory payoff schedule for the UAL, but if we don't get the interest we need every year from our accounts, then we have to go up on the employer cost or compensate for some way, so there is some volatility involved in that. Okay. I promise you there's good news in this presentation. Okay, so the first thing is, we look at rolling averages of our investments. We're still making a lot of money. And so we made so much excess earnings this year that the employers in our state are going to be paying $20 million less this year statewide than they did the year before. That means we're paying off the debt. We're also, they will be contributing $46 million less dollars in the year 2016. So we are paying the debt off. Now, the employer contribution rate is down to 0.8% for the K-12 employees. I want you to look at the bottom of the slide, and I want you to go from the right to the left. All right, that is the employer rate. Look what it is. In 2015, it was 27.7%. That dropped in 2016 to 26.2%. And then it drops this year from 26.2 to 25.4. That's a downward trajectory in employer cost. So we've got 3 years of data that's showing we are bringing the cost down. Use that bullet, because that was prepared by our state actuaries. Every year they have to do what's called an evaluation report, report it to the TRSL board. Every year they have to take that to the Legislative PERSAC Committee on Retirement and get it approved, and it was approved. So these numbers were validated and approved, and it's showing the employer rate is going down. Okay, the next good news is we have to pay off the UAL by 2042. They put that in law finally. The thing is, they always said you had to pay the debt, but they never amortized it, and they never made it a mandatory payment. But for the last several years, it's been mandatory. For the first time in history, we're not just paying the interest on the account. For the first time in history, we're paying the principal down. If you look at that downward trajectory, that's showing the debt's going down. And by 2042, that debt should go away, okay? In addition to that, the figures from this year show we're going to pay it off a year early because of our excess earnings. Yes, ma'am.
Does that debt go away assuming the state still makes its contributions?
Very good question. Does the debt go away assuming the state makes its contributions? Absolutely. And the state now is mandated to make its contributions, and that's why the employer share is so high. So that's an excellent question. They have to make the contributions for it to go away, and they are making the contributions. Okay, next slide. All right, these are just some figures that show where our system is. Top line, if you look from 2013 to 2015, our assets have grown to $17.9 billion. That's how much money we have in the bank. You can see the money is going up because our interest income is going up. Okay, now the next line is important, where it says investment return. Well, it went from 13.88 to 19.9 to 3.11. Okay, that's not very good. But we don't look at just the yearly rate. We look at the aggregation of the data over a 30-year period. And so this year, they'll drop off the 30-year one, and then they'll pick up this year's, and it'll be a rolling average. So look at the bottom line, and it shows the 30-year actuarial return. And you can see we're at 8.6%. Our actuaries say if we can maintain that rate, at that rate or higher, we can pay off our debt and we can pay our benefits. Now, every year, They're going to roll in the new average, they're going to bring a new report to the board, and they're going to have to make adjustments. But based on our actuaries' report, our system is on the right track. Okay, the UAL balance, yes, it's high, but look, starting from the right, going to the left, the UAL dropped from $11.3 billion in 2013. It increased to 11.9 the next year because the market went down, but this year we dropped it to 11.1 billion. What does that mean in dollars and cents? We made so much excess earnings off our investment accounts, we added $785 million to paying off the debt. We dropped that debt from 11.9 to 11.1%. That's a huge jump. That's what's buying us a year off our mortgage. It's like paying the mortgage off early. Look at the bottom line, right to left. In 2013, we were only 56.4% funded, meaning only 56.4% of people would collect their benefit. We have increased that to 60.9. We jumped over 3 points this year alone toward fully funding our system. That's a very positive message. That means the mandatory payments, the way they're adjusting for the costs, are working. This is the information we need to use with legislators. Okay, this line is the one you want to go up, because this line is showing how is our percentage of funding going up. And it is showing by 2042 we'll be almost 100% funded. Our debt's gone away. We have enough money from our investments to pay everybody their full benefit. And this isn't something they're going to wait and look at in 2042. Every year, this comes back to the board, and adjustments are made accordingly. So those are the reasons we feel like our system's working. We're paying off the debt. Yes, it's tough. It's kind of like making balloon payments and then it goes down. They've introduced new legislation. A couple of the bills call for re-amortizing more often to relieve some of the costs. They're constantly doing things to clean up the system. But use that data when you're talking to your legislators. The next line of defense is, we don't want to shift from a DB to a DC. You have two articles in your packet. One is showing, they're talking about two different states that have tried to shift their system. Alaska is trying to shift their system because they went from a DB to a DC. They promised to pay the debt, and the new people were going to get a defined contribution. If you read the article or the blog, it's going to show you that it didn't work. The debt's getting higher, and the people who are into the DC system are not getting enough interest return to retire. The same thing's happening in Michigan. West Virginia did a shift in the early 90s from a DB to a DC. A few years ago, they switched back. So now other states are going to say, well, Utah's doing it, Colorado's doing it. Maybe those systems will work, but we haven't seen the data to show it. I just received a research article yesterday. California is about to make a shift, one of the biggest retirement systems in the country. CalPERS from a DB to a DC. The University of California in Berkeley just released a study saying they don't need to do that. Some national groups saying we need to go from DB to DC because it's portable, because the teaching profession has turned into people who are moving from state to state, and they'd rather take their contribution with them. California just released the study and said, that teacher mobility isn't as large as we thought. Most of the teachers that do leave within the first 5 years, and it's only 6% of their total teaching population. The majority of people stay with the system and provide their experience because they are provided a guaranteed benefit, either through an early or a long retirement. That's powerful information for us to use. Now, I've instructed my staff to go in and post this article link on our webpage, and they're doing that this morning. So in another day or so, go on our webpage, LRTA webpage, and it'll have a link to the article. For every state that thinks they should stay with the DB system, they're going to give you an example of a state that's making a change to a DC. So we need to use articles, research, facts to defend our system. And that being said, I will provide you with that. If you're not a member of our email club, our organization, I will constantly provide you with research, links, language, and things to use as we defend our system. So to recap the defense, we have data that shows we're paying off our debt and our system will pay our benefit. We have data that shows making a shift from a DB to a DC is not working in many states. Yes, sir.
Yes, great presentation. I've got a question, and it's hybrid, but I want to give you a little bit of the background now. Prior to having the opportunity to come into teaching, I was a federal employee, and 35 years ago, and I walked out with a pension with the Civil Service Retirement System. 35 years ago, they went through the same thing. That was about this.
If you don't mind, use the microphone so everyone.
That was about the time that defined contribution plans were coming about. And the trend has been since then for defined contribution plans. So lots of luck on that. But having said that, and if a number of you talk to your children and that are out working and find out if they have a defined benefit plan, and it's very, very rare. And that's the trend. Now, going back 35 years ago, the federal government wanted to get out of the defined benefit plan civil service retirement system. And what they put in effect was FERS, Federal Employment Retirement System. And it's a hybrid of a defined contribution and defined benefit plan. It's a three-legged stool.
Right.
And that they have a 401k, which they get a match, and they get a defined benefit plan, which was much smaller than the CSRS, the one I was in. And they also pay Social Security and get Social Security, which is really a defined benefit plan if you look at it that way. So if you look at the current system you have, it would also solve a hybrid such as that if Social Security would be invoked too. You would get rid of the government pension offset, GPO, which a number of you guys teachers are affected by it, most of them, and the windfall elimination provision, which is WEP. That's another terminology used for it. So that kind of thing. So I'm leading up to my question that why not a hybrid system? And again, one would have to cost it out. I've seen it all or nothing kind of thing here. And by the way, they went through the same arguments. And how they transitioned it, by the way, they asked employees such as myself, if you want to go into FERS, you can go into FERS now. You're in CRS, that's what you hired in under. But what they did is they honored the obligation to all the federal employees that had been hired to stay in CSRS if they wanted. Believe it or not, the younger employees opted for FERS because they liked controlling their own retirement funds. That was their argument. 35 years ago, federal government has had no problem hiring people under the FERS system. So my only question with all that as background is something maybe a hybrid could be looked into instead of all or nothing.
Thank you for sharing that background. Some really good points. A lot of the research shows if we want to have a robust retirement, we should have a three-legged stool. We should have Social Security, whatever type of retirement plan our state would provide for us, and our own personal savings and investments. So a couple of issues for us, and I'm reminded of what Maureen Rescard has said many times in presentation is, we can't compare ourselves to one scenario because we're unique. First of all, our state was waived from Social Security, and we had to guarantee we would provide a defined benefit equal to or greater. So constitutionally, we are guaranteed a benefit. Now, they can change it. A hybrid is one of the proposals. We have asked for that law for the hybrid that's proposed for actuarial numbers for them to run, because you have to run it through and do an analysis and prove it's equal to or better, but we have not received those numbers. I don't have the data from the system you're talking about. I'm glad to hear that. I think hybrids could work. We just haven't seen it work with state systems to date. And so one of the things they'll do with this system is they'll have to do an actuarial analysis of the proposed law, because they're doing rolling actuarial rates For instance, on hours, they multiply it by 2.0 or 2.5 times the number of years. The new system is 1% for so many years, 1.5% for so many years, and they roll it. Well, we need to do an analysis to see if it'll produce the results. So I'm not saying a hybrid won't work. I'm just saying, looking at all the state systems we've looked at, we haven't found one that produces a benefit equal to or better than ours. I like your point, and thank you for bringing up about the WEP and GPO. For people like me, I've retired. I didn't have my quarters in before 85. I pay a lot of Social Security. Now and before and after I retired, I will never collect a Social Security benefit, no matter how much money I put into that system. So by the way, we just signed a letter with several other states. There is proposed legislation to go in and do a partial repeal of the WPO, the GPO and the WEP. If we go in and make amendments and consider a hybrid plan, then we're going to have to work with Social Security and do an analysis that shows the benefit would be equal to or better. So that would be one analysis on that. Okay, continuing. All right, so what will our system look like in 2042? The first time I did this a couple of weeks ago, I said, what will we look like in 2042? And I got a completely different reaction. So let's look at it. If we take the data and the information that I presented to you and the solutions I presented to you, and to me this particular slide is very important when talking with legislators, is our contribution rate for the employer will drop from 25.4% to 1.1%. That's a bang for the buck for our state. And that would be equivalent to what Social Security. The income, our assets continue to grow. We'll have enough asset income to pay all of our obligations. The benefits, everyone vested in the system will collect their entire benefits. That's active employees and retired employees. And more importantly, that debt, the UAL, will go away, which will minimize our expenses, leaving it down to the administrative cost for the program. So for me, it's really important not just to say, we'll pay the debt. Here's an equation that shows how each of these factors will be affected if we follow through with our current plan. Also, one more point on the hybrid plan. No matter what happens, the state still has to pay its debt and to pay our benefits. I'm saying states that have gone to a hybrid or a DC have not been able to pay their debt down. And they have not been able to retire people with that. If there's an actuary or a cost to the state, they will have to do an analysis of that. Representative Ivey, who's introduced the bill, admitted it's going to cost the state more money to change the system. Well, I say, why do we want to cost the state more money when we can't balance the budget now? Now, if that bill goes through, and I'll explain in just a moment, it will require a 2/3 vote of the legislature, and it will be a constitutional amendment and have to go to the voters to do that. So it is sort of big business and an important concept, but before we make that change, I'm a numbers person. Show us the numbers that show it will work, okay? All right, so let's take this equation and recap it on the benefits. Following our plan, this equation will be balanced by 2042. And the reason for that is the employer normal cost will steadily decrease until it gets down to less costly. By the way, we brought up to some of our legislators, well, let's just change to Social Security. Let's go from a DB to Social Security. They don't want to do that. They don't want to do that. So that they don't want to put on the table, okay? But we do know the employer cost will be a bang for the buck. The UL is coming down, the payments are level, the debt is expected to be paid off early. We will be 100% funded by the end of the mandatory amortization period following the schedule. The legislative actuary agreed with the methodology of our asset reports. Those are the professionals hired to run the reports and do that. And the state legislative PERSEC actuary ran his own analysis and agreed with it in the fall. Now, he since changed his mind and said we need to lower our discount rate, but we do have an article that shows where he did agree with that in the fall. So ladies and gentlemen, this is the ammunition I submit to you to use as we're talking to legislators. Okay, so with that in mind, what can you do? Well, first of all, join LRTA. We are the only organizations that strictly represent retirees. Now, I would say if you're an LAE, you're an active employee, LFT, you're an active employee, they definitely do stand up for retirement rights. We worked very hard as a group a few weeks ago to get that valuation report approved. But they also represent other things for the active employees, but I will say this is all we do. This is all we do is represent your benefits. Join our email club. There's a pink slip going around. I send out weekly email blasts. I'll say, this committee's meeting here. This is the bill they're going to discuss. This is the language we need to submit to them. Here are the emails. Just click on the email and copy and paste. It's very powerful when we're doing that. Now, I'm not going to make the determinations on these bills I'm going to show you. TRSL board will do a formal analysis. They were presented last week at their board meeting. They'll do an analysis once we get the actuary numbers from these other bills. They'll make a recommendation to support or not support, and then our LRTA board meets next month on the 9th. We'll do a review too, and we'll update that legislative handout on recommendations whether to support or not. Also, actively respond to legislators. Talk to legislators about it. I'm empathetic. I worked in government for many years. I sat before Education House committees for years. It's tough. They have a responsibility to balance the budget. We have to be empathetic to that. It's not them or us. It's saying if we follow the course, we are going to be a cost savings to the state once all of these implementations have been put into place. Okay. And as I said, we'll provide you with content information, language, what to say to these legislators, who in your area is responsible for those decisions, and how to respond. So let's work together to be activists, to protect our plan, and to keep that plan in place. So with that in mind, I'd like to skip ahead and just show you real quickly. Here are some of the bills that have been introduced to the system. One of your legislators, Representative Pearson, has been renamed to the House Retirement Committee. Beryl Peacock has been named as the chair of the Senate Finance Committee. I'm not going to go through all of these, but just to say, some of them we obviously support, some of them we don't. I think one good news is we do have 2 COLA bills in there for retirees. It's very hard to get a COLA right now because of the way the law is written. It says every other year, but it also says the consumer price index has to be a negative number. Well, it hasn't been a negative number in years. So we may have to go in and request amendments to that. If they say we can't give you a COLA because there's no money, that's not true. That money has been in an experience account for 2 years. They can't touch it. It's statutorily protected. So the money is sitting in the account for a COLA this year. So that's one thing. They did change it. We can't get multiple COLAs. We can't put more money in that account for more than 1 COLA. They are procedural safeguards that help protect the system, but there is money there. Representative Jones has been our friend in the past, and I appreciate that they're introducing the same bill from the House side. The Ivy bills, most of those are going to require, 2 of them will require constitutional amendment, will require two-thirds votes. One of them is introducing a hybrid system. The point is the actuaries don't have any data, don't have specifics in there to show it's working or not working. That would have to be presented to Social Security and the federal government before they could allow that to be implemented, if it does go through. One of them is waiting for attorneys to do it. One of them is pertaining to the guaranteed benefit that's putting 2 conditions on it. Basically reads, if those conditions are, if the money's not there, you don't get the guaranteed benefit. But it's so vaguely written, we've got to get a legal interpretation. We're going to keep an eye on that one. One of the bills is in there that wants to put 3 members of non-retirees from the private sector on our board and represent us on our board. I'll let you interpret that one on your own. There are two that are return to work that I think are good for us, the return to work. That just adds to the list of people who will be allowed to return to work. When we have the discussions, if you say, why won't they let us go back to work? They cap it at 25%. Well, it's hard for a lot of them to accept, well, you got your guaranteed benefit, now you want to go back and make more money off the system. So that's why it's hard with the return to work issues, but we do have two on the table. The hybrid system, I think one of the explanations was you would get a defined benefit, and at some point you could work as long as you wanted under a defined contribution. So there's lots of discussions on those bills being introduced. As I said, this is just a framework of things that are going out. I will say the Peacock bills, I put TBA, but after the TRSL board meeting last week, most of those are cleanup bills from Act 399, which are going through and fine tweaking, calling for reamortization to help with employer costs, et cetera. I feel certain most of those will be supported and help to tweak and make our system more robust. So that's basically all the bills.
Okay, thank you, Rodney.